Prosecutors say the man who killed two teenage intruders in his home planned the deadly shootings, waiting patiently for the kids with his guns and snacks and water by his side. The killings happened back in 2012 on Thanksgiving Day in central Minnesota, small town there in that state. The accused murderer is Byron Smith, a retired security engineer for the State Department. He says he was defending himself inside of his own home. His lawyer says he was hiding in his basement out of fear after he heard a window break and footsteps upstairs. Smith described to police in chilling detail what happened next. He says one of the intruders walked down his basement steps and that he shot the teenager the second his hips were in clear sight. Then he told police that he shot the teen again, this time in the face, wrapped his body in a tarp and dragged him into his workshop. Minutes later, he says a girl came down the steps and he shot her as well. Now, Smith claims she laughed after his rifle jammed, so he grabbed another gun and shot her again. He then said that he finished her off with a shot under her chin because a .22 caliber revolver, quote, doesn't go through bone very well. Smith left both bodies in his basement, says he did not try to contact police until a day later because he says he didn't want to screw up their Thanksgiving break. Those audio recordings played in court just yesterday, and today the jury heard separate audio from inside the man's home. He says he'd set up the recording devices to protect his house from burglary. Jurors reportedly heard several gunshots, and at one point the suspect told one of the teens, "You're dead." The shooting victims were cousins and both were unarmed, but investigators say the victims were linked to a few other local robberies. Under Minnesota law, this is important now, a person may use deadly force to prevent a felony from taking place inside of his or her home. But authorities have said that Smith still went too far, shooting the teens in the head after they no longer posed a threat. Now, Anna Yum joins us now with more on this. She's the defense attorney and a former prosecutor, so you can see it from both sides. And good day to you from San Diego, California. And how do you see this? I mean, do you see this man giving himself a legitimate defense under state law as we understand it in Minnesota?
Yeah, Bill, this is going to be a very tough case on both sides because if you think about it, I read the statute, the Minnesota statute, and you're right. You have to reasonably believe that you are going to face some sort of great bodily injury or death, or you're trying to prevent the commission of a felony in your own home. So the real issue for the jury to grapple with is, was Mr. Smith's actions reasonable given the circumstances? I think a big hurdle for the prosecution is going to have to overcome jury nullification. Will a jury empathize with him and say, look, he was the victim and these people were breaking into his home? Or will the defense have to overcome the burden of his actions, the fact that he shot multiple times and that he did not report this right away? If this was really a self-defense, why did he not report it right away?
State law says
I think this is going to be a tough case.
Okay, state law, no duty to retreat inside one's own residence, but there is a duty under law to, quote, act reasonably when using force in self-defense. Now, as a prosecutor, how can you prove he was lying in wait?
Well, I think the prosecutor is going to use building blocks to try to prove their case in the sense that he was sitting in the basement, he had snacks and water with him, he had 2 loaded firearms, and he had a tarp. He had all this waiting for him. So I think the prosecutor's main argument is going to be, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is not about self-defense. This was about revenge. He was mad that these teens were breaking into his home, and instead of protecting himself, he took matters into his own hands, and he took it upon himself to give revenge back. I think that's the prosecutor's strongest argument in this case.
So you say the prosecutor added a second-degree charge to open up a window of sorts. And the window, you believe, is that they're not confident they can get a first-degree conviction. Why do you think that?
Well, I think given the facts and circumstances, Bill, I think the prosecutor knows that the jury may empathize with this man. I think a lot of people get very sensitive when you think about, I'm the king of my castle, I'm the king of my home. If anyone comes into my home, I have the duty to defend myself. And I think that the prosecutor knows that in advance and knows that the jury, in fact, might sympathize with him and might go his way because they may not want to convict. And so I think that they're opening this door by giving the jury a second option. Yeah. You know what? If you don't believe he's guilty of first degree, then he's guilty of second.
Quickly, how did jurors take his own words? Do they help him or do they hurt him?
Well, I think it really depends upon the facts and circumstances, and I think those audio recordings are going to be crucial in this case, Bill,
No
because he's saying that she laughed and that he shot, but then if they're hearing recordings of him saying, "You're dead," right away, and they don't hear laughter, that really may poke some holes to his credibility. So I think the jury's really going to have to listen to those recordings, and if he testifies, then they're going to have to take that into consideration.
We'll see when that happens. Thank you. Anna Young, thank you for your time out of San Diego. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bill.